Fucking dogs. What's up? Word. Do 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 do. How's everybody's day?
Great.
That good, huh?
I don't have to go to work again until Tuesday.
That is pretty awesome, actually, then. It's really freaking cool.
And I got to run an A10, so.
Where'd you run it to?
In the spot.
Oh, so you ran in place?
Yep. Did the running. It was a non-eventful hydraulic check.
Oh, nice. Still.
Didn't even get to push the throttles up. Had to stay at idle.
Oh, man.
I was joking with my buddy. I was like, it looks really weird if this cockpit shut off. I just wanted to turn on all the screens.
Like, I can do everything. I know how to do it.
I did troubleshoot a targeting pod with the avionics guy.
That's nice.
He's like, it's not moving. I'm like, you don't have it as soy. It worked.
And then he's like, wait, how do you know that?
Yeah. Stupid pointy heads.
Yeah, those avionics and armament dogs. They're weird. Wow. Nothing? Really?
I really expected a out of that one.
Yeah.
Paper's not here. Isn't he the avionics guy?
Well, yeah, but I was.
Yeah, but that was. Yeah, that was
emo.
Yeah.
Oh, he said armament, not armament.
I said avionics and armament dogs are good.
Yeah. Ammo's different than weapon. So you gotta say something like weapons, thinking they're.
Oh, see, in the army, they do it all.
Yeah.
Armament guys do it all.
Air Force likes to split everything.
To make it even more specific, so that you could say, it's not my job.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'm gonna do some attendance. No, can you do attendance for 93?
Sure thing.
Thank you, sir. All right. Don't have as many guys here as I thought we would, but that's okay. Thursday, we're gonna do some training here, and then Tuesday we're gonna do a mission. So over the weekend, if you're gonna be here on Tuesday, make sure you let your staff guys know so they can make sure they can relay it to the mission planner. Trying to think. Tex, you got anything? Lurch, you got anything?
I don't.
I got nothing.
Cool. All right. Tex, are you guys gonna be in on the training, or are you guys planning on doing something else?
I am planning on being in the training thing to see
Oh man, that sounds great.
how interesting it is.
Wow. All right. Interesting.
Shots fired already.
No, not negative. I just want to see how it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just gotta see how it is.
Oh my lord, whatever. I am too exhausted to be dealing with this stuff. Okay.
I'm sorry to hear that. All right. Let me share my screen here. Any questions before we go to training? All right, good. I didn't want to answer anything.
Oh my.
Oh boy.
Liquid,
I
someone's
want
got some issues, dude.
Someone's getting yelled at. All right. So today we're going to go over some just call it airspace operations, but we're going to do airport operations, and then we're also going to do carrier operations. Some of it's going to be super repetitive to those who've been around for a while. But I figured since I'm writing this SOP, we would go over it, especially for the guys that are new, or just we've not participated in going over this stuff before. So one of the things that I don't want to say bugged me, but it kind of bugged me just being a real life pilot. When we were coming back from our mission on Tuesday, people were cutting each other off and everything like that, and the pattern and everything like that. So I figured I would quickly go over the right of way rules. Yep, right of way, just like if you're driving, and it's pretty much kind of the same way. So you have different kinds of right of way. You have aircraft category right of way. We'll go over that in a second, and then you also have scenario based or condition based right of way. So, obviously anything that gives over anything else is an emergency. If somebody has an emergency or aircraft in distress, everybody just needs to get out of the way, right? So if you're in the pattern, sorry about your luck. Extend your downwind or something. Just get out of your way. Don't even try to turn to final or anything like that. Don't try to squeeze it in or anything. If someone's in distress, they have complete right away, free pass. In the real world, if you do declares that type of an emergency and it's in falsehood, you can actually get in pretty big trouble for that. So that's why, if someone declares an emergency or some type of distress, they truly do. They clear the path for anybody. It doesn't matter if it's a 172 coming into LaGuardia or anything like that. It doesn't matter. So just be cognizant of that. No matter what, emergency aircraft, distress aircraft are the ones that get priority over everybody else. So after that, then you have by category. So if you're in the same category, and by category we mean like lighter than aircraft, which is like a balloon, you have gliders, and then you have like airplanes, and then you have helicopters, rotorcraft. So when you're in the same category, the right of way always goes to the person that is lower altitude without someone diving underneath somebody else. So the idea behind that is If you're coming into an approach and you're both like 10 miles out or something like that, and one person's at 3,000 feet, and the other person's at 10,000 feet, the guy at 3,000 feet has the right of way. So the guy at 10,000 feet has to go and figure something out, whether it's, flipping a 360 or something like that, creating some space and time. The guy lower has the right of way to the approach of the airport. So some of you may know that, some of you don't know that, but that is kind of expected in aviation. So the guy that's lower, and the reason being is, what if he doesn't have enough power to get higher, to get out of the way, or anything like that, right? So if the guy that's above has time and creates more time and space. Any questions on that? All right. So obviously, you have a balloon. They have like basically no control over their airplane other than maybe blowing hotter or something like that. So they really have the right of way after an emergency. After that is glider, because they only have so much resources that they can use, right? They're not generating any thrust, so they have to manage that thrust. If they're out of that energy, then there's not much that they can do. After that, you have airplanes, and then you have rotorcraft. So powered airplanes, Cessna 172, all the way up to a B2. It doesn't really matter. They consider that the same category. Rotorcrafts, being as nimble and as agile as they are, they can get out of the way no matter what, right? So if they were on the final approach, they're probably going 40, 50 knots, and you got an airplane that's coming in at 200 knots, they can tell the helicopter, just go ahead and peel off, circle back around. He probably wastes maybe 3 to 4 minutes, rather than someone going at 200 knots and he has to go and spend the next 5 minutes circling back around and getting back into the pattern. Any questions on category? Cool. I could probably just pull this over so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So when you're approaching head on, the idea is that you obviously avoid each other. Red is dead, green is good, right? So if you both see green, if you're head on to each other, that's good. You should be able to pass. If you see red, that's probably not a good idea. And when you're overtaking, the person that's overtaking another aircraft, so like think about it, like you're on the highway and you're passing somebody. You're supposed to pass on the right, and it's the person that's overtaking the slower person. So if an F-16 is passing an A-10, because it happens, right? The guy that is passing them, that is the person that holds the responsibility of safely overtaking them without incurring any type of danger to the other. So if you're going to buzz an A-10 and you hit them, that's your fault. Not the A-10's fault for being slow. Kind of, but just kidding.
If you're gonna buzz A-10, be prepared to receive rounds.
Bert. I guess that's the way you're gonna go with it. Let's see if I can zoom in on this thing a little bit. I don't think I need to go over too much of the airport markings. Like I said, excuse me. There's a link in the chat for you guys to go and look through this. These are just generalized airport markings. Basically, red has to deal with a runway or don't go somewhere, basically, without permission. If it's black inside, that just means that that's what you're on. And if it's yellow, it's basically indicating that there's something coming up or somewhere where you can go. The number on the runway, you see 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how many feet in 1,000 are left on the airport or on that runway. So some of you might be like, oh shit, I didn't know that. Yeah. So if you see 4, that means there's 4,000 feet left on that runway. So a couple things. We see this at MinHab, a displaced threshold. So essentially the idea behind the displaced threshold is you can go ahead and take off on that, but when you land, you're supposed to actually land at the actual threshold, not on the arrows. It's designed mostly because of noise abatements and approaches. So sometimes runways, you need a little bit more time and space to get going, especially like a C-17 or something of that nature, C-5. So they give them a little bit more room, but because of the approaches, nearby neighbors and stuff like that, they have to push the approach further down. And they may actually change some of those approach plates to maybe be a little bit more steep approach. Same thing here. This is just a temporary look of that. And then a overrun, that is not for you to taxi onto, believe it or not. That's actually designed to crumble under the weight of an airplane. It's supposed to help with the overrun if you were coming from the opposite direction and you couldn't stop. You go in there and it starts caving under the weight of the airplane, and that helps you to stop so you don't go into the dirt. A couple other things that you may or may not know is a number of big thick lines at the end. So if there's 1, 2, 3, 4 on one side and 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other side, that tells you how wide the runway is, believe it or not. So I believe 3 is 120 feet and 4 would be 160 feet. I'll double check on that. But it's basically indicating to a pilot that's approaching, coming in, landing on that threshold, to say how many feet wide. And also, this is the beginning of the landing zone. That's what these big, thick markers are. That's the appropriate touchdown location. Here, just saying, here's a good start point, and here's a good end point. It doesn't do that. I was trying to do Emo's little cool, fancy Star Wars thing, but it doesn't do it. And then, obviously, everybody knows what the numbers are, right? Nobody
How many
knows what
runways
the
are left?
Yeah, how many landings are left? So it's degrees and heading, right? So that would be 250. That's the closest magnetic heading. 10 would be 010, not 100. Or would it? Who's paying attention here? What would the heading be for 10?
0, 1.
Nope.
No, it'd be 100, right?
Yeah, that'd be 100.
Oh, you're talking about the runway being 10.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were talking about the heading of 10.
No, I knew where you're going, but no. Cool. So everybody knows all the markings mean. That's great. Oh, cool. All right. Well, I wish they had that on everything. So, so some standards here. The only time that we want you to talk on the radio is when there's impact to somebody else. That's the new going forward method with everything that we're going to push to you guys. So if you're hovering in a ramp area and nobody's around you and you're not going anywhere, there's no reason to tell anybody, unless you just want to sound cool. However, if there's people in the area and you're going to be taxiing to a runway and you have to go through a bunch of different areas that are going to possibly impact other people, that's when you need to make that phone call. Well, not phone call, but radio call. And you're just going to say who you, what traffic you are, who you are, where you're going. That's all you need to do. You don't need to say, I'm going to go through Charlie 1 to Alpha to Foxtrot to Golf 1 over to Hotel and then over to the run-up pad. You're just taxiing to the run-up pad, short of runway 9. That's fine. Unless you really want to do it, but you just sound like a weirdo. Any questions on ground movement calls? Also, when you're doing a ground movement, if you're doing it as a group, as a flight, you can just say, in this case, I use Charger 1. Charger 1, a flight of how many aircraft? You can do that. If you're going to be taxiing and then 6 minutes later, emo taxes over to join me up, we have to make separate calls. Okay. Let's see. All right. A pattern. Pattern is something that is recognizable, right? So, an aircraft or airfield pattern is basically a big rectangle. And I know this is going to be super repetitive, but at any airfield, the pattern is 1,000 feet above ground level, less than 240 knots, and it's left-hand traffic pattern. So you're going to go left after you take off, unless otherwise specified. Typically speaking, if you have a mountain obstacle that would be in the left-hand area, or a dense area of, a city skyline or something like that, they would put in the charts that you would use a right-hand pattern. Most of the airports that we use just use a left-hand pattern. Now, the only time that is not is when you have a more than one runway, and basically you use opposing patterns. So in the sense of here, this is Nellis, 2-1 left, you would do a left-hand pattern, and 2-1 right, you would do a right-hand pattern. The only reason you wouldn't do that is if ATC told you to use a left-hand pattern. And that is just standard pilotship. Vice versa, if you're looking at the 3 left, that would be a left-hand pattern. And 3 right would be a right-hand pattern.
There's a center runway.
They would not use all 3 at the same time, unless they were just doing direct end approaches.
DFW.
So what they would do is if you're doing closed traffic, they would push you to either the left or the right, and they would just use the center for approaches. Yep. That is for pattern work. So that means you're in the pattern and you're just tucking around here. Okay. We'll talk about we'll talk about that. Are you talking about a straight in approach? So 1,500 feet is for the break. We'll go into that in here in a second. It's 1,500 feet at 300 knots. And then by the time that you go into the break and come back, you'll be at 1,000 feet and less than 300. Be about 240 knots. Yep. Right out of the manual.
That's how it is for all aircraft.
Yep. All right. So we already talked about the number on the runway, right? That is used by the wind. So if you have wind coming towards, I think that's 350, 360, whatever it is, that means the wind's coming almost directly south. So if let's go back to our Nellis example here. If you have a prevalent wind coming from the west going to the east, 2 and right, 2 and left is probably going to be your common thing. Now, there are things like noise abatements and stuff like that that will require certain airports to dominantly use only one runway. I believe Nellis does that too, just to try to lower the noise abatement going into the actual city. A lot of cities do that. Is unless there's significant winds, they'll try to use the ones that are going to minimize noise. So if you had a very strong wind coming in the other direction, though, the safety of the aircraft and the people on it are going to override that noise abatement. So they'll bring them in on the 3 left, 3 right. So just as important as the pattern is, well, let's talk about a couple things here. We're going to go over that in a minute here. So quick identification. You have the upwind, which is you taking off. Get it? You're going up and away. Upwind. At that point, once you're at 1,000 feet, if you continue on, that's you departing. See ya. Talk to you later. But if you were going to stay in the pattern, then you're going to go into the crosswind, downwind, base, final. When you enter the pattern, you normally would do a 45-degree entry into the downwind. It's like merging on the highway. And by doing that, what it does is allows you to see the traffic coming, and then you can swoop in behind them or spin it around and come back again. Now, don't worry, we'll talk about overhead brakes and all that kind of stuff here in a minute. Because just as important knowing as the pattern and how to approach and depart the pattern. So we're going to have very weird and various things, and it's very fluid. So you have the overhead brake, you have an airfield overfly, and then the normal 45-degree off the downwind. So the overhead brake, you saw that for a second there. The idea is you're going to be 1,500 feet, 300 knots. You're overflying the pattern by 500 feet because they're at 1,000. You're at 500. So then when you go in the brake, you're actually burning off altitude and speed, and you're coming back in, and you should be at about 1,000 feet, less than 240 knots, gear down, 13 degrees AOA max. And then you would go into, for F-16s, they call it perch, when you're like 45 degrees off, and then turn it in to final. That's the same as the 18s. I know at the carrier that I think they do 350 knots at 800 feet. Yep. So an airfield overfly is essentially like you're like, hey, where's that airport? Oh shit, it's right there. So you have to be at least 500 feet over the altitude of the pattern. Overfly the airfield is straight and narrow as you want to, and basically you're going to orbit then down to the pattern altitude and then merge into the pattern. So you're still doing the 45 degrees, but you're overflying it because you're like, oh man, I'm at 20,000 feet and there's the airport. Said no 810. You would then orbit and circle back down to get to the pattern. Any questions on that?
You showed them making a right turn orbit down into 45 degrees entry.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So,
Okay.
so the reason for that would be
Straight left turn into the downwind.
So if you were to do that, I see what you're saying. Now, if you were to do that and you went past the pattern and took a left, by the time that you came down to the correct altitude, you'd be at base and you wouldn't be in the actual downwind, which means you would have a hard time seeing people in the downwind, let alone people in base or final. So it increases your chances of being able to hit somebody or creating mass confusion and chaos. People get pissed off, rage quit, all that kind of fun stuff. Does that make sense?
Everything but the rage quit.
So the idea behind that is when you go past the pattern and turn right, you're creating space and time so that you can assess how fast or how slow you need to go to get into that pattern based on how congested it is. And if it's too congested, maybe you just stay up there and you wait until it's less congested. Go to another airfield or something. Here's another illustration of the pattern. Just showing you a bunch of different things here that you could have. people approaching in the 45, people taking a straight departure, taking off to the south, whatever have you. You can have a lot of different things. So one of the things is what we don't want is a bunch of people saying a bunch of different things on the radio. So the only thing that you need to talk about when you're on the radio in the pattern are things that are going to contribute to situational awareness. I'm trying to find where I wrote it. Put it somewhere. All right, I don't know where I put it. That sucks. What? Well, we'll be doing it this way. All right. So one of the things that we don't want is a bunch of people talking about every little tiny area of the pattern that they're in. So every time someone hits the crosswind, you don't need to say crosswind. The only time you would do that is if you've got a timing issue and you're kind of letting that person that's right up on your butt and know that, hey man, you're landing and I'm just now at the crosswind. Maybe you don't need to be on my ass as much. Or that may create some space and time for you to get to the downwind. So the biggest thing that you need to call is when you're turning base and final, right? The final is the biggest thing because that gives you situational awareness on with the traffic coming in. It allows people to plan ahead, especially if they're 10 miles. So if you've got a Blackhawk that's 10 miles away coming in and they're going to be landing on 09 and you're already in the pattern and you're less than 3 miles away and you're turning base, you obviously know situationally that you're going to be turning final way before they're even close. So situational awareness. All right. All right, departure, airport departure, another change that we're implementing, 10 miles. So a 10-mile radius, this is kind of where I was, Nikes. A 10-mile radius. Why is it doing that? I just want to move it. Nope, not that. There we go. Well, we're going to say that's 10 miles. It's not to scale. Don't judge. We're going to say that as long as you're within the 10-mile radius of the airport, you need to be on that airport frequency because that, a minimum 10 miles. So that builds situational awareness, whether you're leaving or you're coming in. Ideally, especially being a faster mover, 30 miles should be at least one person on the in the flight is listening to that airport that you're coming into. So that does a couple things, allows you to hear what runway is being used, how many people are in the pattern, what's going on. Maybe it's getting attacked, who knows? And builds that situational awareness. So if you got a guy over here, and you've got a guy on the downwind coming over here, and you've got a guy that's overflying, and you're way over here, you know that, okay, I've got at least 3 flights to deal with. Maybe I go the long way around. Or I'm in an A10, I'll be fine. So at 10 miles, you're going to announce what your intentions are. So a great way to say that would be, Minhab traffic, Charger 1, flight of 4, Seahawk, 10 miles to the northwest, inbound for a full stop, landing 09. So now everybody that's in the traffic pattern, obviously you wouldn't call Midhab at Nellis, but get the picture. You would know that, hey, there's a group of Blackhawks that it's out to the northwest. They're coming in and they're going to be landing on 09. Now, if you say on the flip side, you're monitoring traffic and you're at 30 miles and you hear mid-hab traffic, Charger 1, flight of 4 Seahawks, 28 miles to the northwest, no factory this time. It's because, again, it's take a while for those guys to even get in range of the traffic pattern. At the same time, if Charger 1 then hears, if they're like 10 miles away and they hear mid-hab traffic, Trident 1, flight of 2 Hornets, 28 miles to your northwest, out of Angels 38 for traffic pattern, runway 09, expect midfield break. Those helicopter pilots know there's no way in the world they're going to get there before those Hornets get there. So it builds situational awareness. If you're on the radio and you hear that stuff going on, it'll build that situational awareness. If you feel intimidated by the radio, don't worry, we all screw this stuff up. It's not a big deal. So if you're doing a straight-in approach, it's common practice. Call the final that's approximately 1 to 2 minutes of before landing. So in an F-16, that could be 5-7 miles, depending on how fast they're going at the time. In an A-10, it might be a mile. I joke, I kid, but really. So you know, if you're going to call a 25-mile final, you better be going like Mach 7. If you're a helicopter going 40 knots, maybe call final when you see the threshold. Does that make sense?
So you're saying if you're in a Kiowa, you need to call it 100 miles out?
You say Kiowa?
Yes.
You probably call like 5 feet. You just use your judgment. I mean, if there's nobody around, then shit. If there's nobody in the traffic pattern, you can call 3-mile final. If we actually had ATC, they would tell you when you're final, when you're clear to land. But in this situation with minimal ATC engagement, we're going to rely on your good judgment on how to do this. If someone calls final and you were about to say final, you better be looking around to find out where they're at and adjust your plan of attack. Maybe you go around. Nothing personal. Just go around. Go back up to pattern altitude and just circle back around. If you're doing straight in approaches and you say you're going to abort your landing, you're going to realign on the ILS or whatever you're planning on doing. Cool.
Okay, did you say for straight in approaches 2 minutes?
Yeah, about 2 minutes before you're actually going to be landing. And I think about it, 2 minutes is actually a pretty long time in an airplane that's going about 140, 160 knots. Faster if you're like in an F-16 or an 18. So if you're going, I mean, essentially 175, 200 miles an hour ground speed, and 2 minutes, that could be 5 miles. Make sense?
Okay.
So the idea behind that is that if you are calling final, especially if you're doing straight approaches, you're calling a 5-mile final. We'll say that's 5 miles, and you're going at 200, and you got a guy right here. He hasn't called final yet, and he's going 100. He knows, damn, that dude's right behind me, and he's going to run my ass over. At that point, he knows he needs to either go like that or mention it to him. Hey, man, I'm right in front of you. Do you have traffic in sight?
Who has priority at that point?
Whoever's lower goes back to, when it all breaks down to it, it goes back to the right of way. So just because you didn't call it doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the right or you're the wrong. It goes back to whoever's lower and didn't dive bomb them. So here's a good example, and this is what my CFI always she used to show me. If you have a dude that's on coming in and he's at 5,000 feet, getting rid of this mouse, and you're like right abreast of him, like over here, but you were at, let's say, 6,000. You cannot dive down and get to 4,000 and then call tower. They'll see that on the radar. And honestly, it just being douchebag. Now, if you both haven't called and you look each other in the eyes and you both hit the deck, well, that's something completely different.
That's called an air race in Nevada.
Yes. And honestly, it happens a lot, right? I mean, if you see somebody on the scope and you're like, oh man, that dude, I know what that dude's doing. It happens all the time. As long as you're not diving underneath to get, and who could say, who could prove it? But so that is the idea there. So you're leaving, you take off 2-1 right, and you get about 10 miles out, and then you say, hey man, I'm switching over to package, blah, 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 blah. If you're coming in, I mean, the A-10's maybe 10 miles, but pretty much everybody else, 30 miles, you're monitoring and you're saying, hey man, I'm going to be coming into the area and I'm going to be landing on 2-1 right.
Now, that's only applicable when you're going into the airspace. So if you're going to stay above 12,000 from the airport, there's really not too much of a reason to go monitor it.
Correct. If you want to monitor, absolutely. I would say below 12,000, then you need to be on the radio, even if you're transitioning. And I think I cover that somewhere in the SOP. If you're transitioning, like especially when we start doing more stuff with helicopters, you're probably going to be operating in the vicinity, doing some type of patrol or something like that. You're going to want to monitor that traffic just so you can build that situational awareness so that if you were coming back this way and you got people coming in, you know what's going on. And then if someone says, hey man, there's a freaking helicopter right there, you can chime in and say, hey, no factor, we're at 500 feet or something like that. But yeah, typically if you're way up and you're cruising, if you're like emo at 40,000 and you've got like 50 pounds of fuel left, but you're overflying and you're going way over here, don't worry about it. Well, you had 500 pounds. You had plenty of fuel. Any questions on that stuff? Please feel free to ask.
Did you cover the helicopters? Oh, if you did, I missed it.
I did not. Well, other than if you're in the area, if you're operating in the area, especially with helicopters, and you're within 10 miles, you probably need to monitor that radio. At least one of the ships need to monitor the area just to build that situational awareness. As far as helicopters coming in and landing, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Now, a lot of times, especially you'll go to like a ramp landing or a taxi landing rather than the runway, and you just announce that. You just better know which one you're actually going to.
So it's going to be the standard counterclockwise or counter, whatever the fixed wing is. So if it's a single runway, they're on the left-hand traffic pattern. We're doing the right hand and only like 500-600 feet AGL.
Yeah, you probably won't even be that high, honestly. Typically, I know our guys, if they were 200 feet, I mean, they were up in the sky really far. So, and that's kind of where we go into the carrier operations, because it kind of holds on to some of the rotor wing stuff as well. So any questions on the fixed base stuff?
Nope.
Sweet. All right, carrier operations. I get it. Not everybody here is flying Hornets. Not everybody here is flying Tomcats, mostly because they're retired. And then we do have the T-45 trainer. It's free. I would like for everybody to get that because it's going to be on our maps, our training maps. And if you haven't had a chance to fly it, it's really, really fun. If you guys don't remember the Hawk, it's basically the same flight characteristics and all that kind of stuff. Simplistic, especially if you're trying to learn carrier operations. You're not quite sure if you want to get into the whole Hornet thing. Great stuff. Also, this kind of builds some situational awareness when you hear radio comm traffic during missions when we do have carrier operations going on. So it kind of builds some of that context as well. Some of the areas we're going to talk about tonight is the operational fundamentals. The carrier zones, very similar to what we were kind of talking about with the airspace. Departures, marshals, case one procedures, configurations of the carrier, and then rotor wing operations regarding the carrier and other naval boats. But essentially, it will pertain quite similarly to fixed wing or fixed base. So this is adapted pretty much directly from CSG3s, and part of that is so that we maintain the same standard, especially since we do so many joint ops with them. Carrier operations are inherently dangerous, and they're very unique. Not to say that the rest of the aviation world is not. In fact, I would counter that and say naval carrier operations with rotor wing are even more inherently dangerous. So case one, that equals translates into the Air Force world of VFR. So if you have VFR conditions, that's case one conditions, day conditions. So ceiling at least 3,000 feet, visibility of at least 5 miles or greater, daytime only, overhead holding pattern at Marshall, and then up to 4 flights can be assigned to a single holding altitude. If you can imagine what a watch looks like, the way that they would space those flights out, one would be at 12, one would be at 3, one would be at 6, and one would be at 9, and they'd all be going the same speed, and they're all at the same altitude, turning the same degrees. So very similar to our airspaces at our fixed bases. You're looking at 50 nautical miles to be on the radio, initial comms. And the reason being is it's moving, right? So you may be approaching or you may be going further away. So 50 nautical miles, and that is the magic number in the game, I believe. Otherwise they won't really, they'll tell you to call back. Or they used to. And then 10 nautical miles, just like we're using in the fixed wing or fixed bases, is when you actually are inside the actual control zone. Your Marshall's 5 nautical miles, orbiting on the left-hand side or port side of the ship. Easiest way to remember starboard and port. Port and left are both 4-letter words. Any questions on this? Cool. Case 1 departure, really simple. After you get shot off the catapult, you initially bank to do about a 45-degree right, then a 45-degree left, just to create some space if there is some aircraft being shot off the waste catapult. And then you're going BRC until you hit 7 nautical miles. Less than 500 feet, or at about 500 feet and at 300 knots or less. The idea behind that is your pattern for case 1 recovery is going to be above that, so you don't want to get into their airspace. Once you get 7 nautical miles, then you go to whatever heading you're going to go and whatever altitude you're going to go. So let's say you're leaving the airspace, but then you come back in. So typically in the real world, they would assign you an actual altitude to marshal at. So they would tell you to marshal at 4,000 or marshal at 13,000, which is, I believe, the highest that they go. So that's the altitude you have to be at before you get to the marshal. And then what that marshal is, you would come in at that radius away from the carrier and hit that altitude, and then you start your orbit. And then every time you get right over the carrier, you straighten up a little bit because the carrier is moving. And then you would go back to 30-degree left-hand turn with 250 knots with hook down. So anytime you get to the 3-9 line, what they mean by the 3-9 line is, if you're looking at a watch, it's 12, 6, 3, 9. When you get to the 3 and the 9, that's when you're doing your altitude changes. And then above the 3-9 line is when you're stable. So if you could imagine, if everybody was changing altitudes when they wanted to, you'd have a fucking crash every 5 seconds. So everybody's going down on the bottom side and then maintaining that altitude at the top side. So if they told you to marshal at 4,000, and then they tell you to next time around go to 2,000. Well, when you get to the 9 o'clock position, then you go down 2,000 feet and then level off. And then on this time around, you're at 2,000 feet the whole time. And then when they tell you to Charlie or commence, again, you would commence when you're at the 9 o'clock position. We'll go over that here in a bit. Any questions on that part right there? No questions. Wow. Okay. Case 1 operations. So what we're doing when we're doing case 1 recoveries, you have a commence, which we just talked about. You do it at the 9 o'clock position. You increase your orbit just a little bit because you are descending down to 800 feet and 350 knots. At that point, you're going faster, so you're going to be coming out a little bit wider, and you're going to have to turn a little bit harder because you're going to get about 3 miles. Yep, 3 nautical miles to hit the initial. At that point, you're going to be running parallel on the BRC, which is the same degree heading that the boat is heading. 3 miles, 800 feet, 350 knots, and you're just going right across here. The idea behind this is it's your last minute look-see to make sure the deck is clear and ready for recovery. At this point, once they tell you to commence, there's usually no talking until you're in the groove. And that's just it's called zip lip operations. They just like it so that the only person that's talking is the LSO, which is guiding people on because they're having so many people come on. Typically speaking, when we're doing initial training with guys, we'll probably be walking them through. We may actually have them call, okay, when are you at the initial? Do you know when you're actually at the initial? Do you know when you're going into the break? The idea behind the break is approximately 1 nautical mile. You'll see the shit hop breaks, but standard is 1 nautical mile forward of the ship. You get to go into a break that goes from 800 feet, and then by the time that you're on the downwind, you're at 600 feet. And then every 10 seconds after that, your flight will then break off. Sound good? Once you're on the downwind, that's when you're getting everything adjusted. You're getting your flaps and your gear and your AOA speed and all that kind of stuff. So that when you're a beam of the ship, you are good to go. You turn 30 degrees left, and you're trying to hold the AOA. And then by that time, you remember the boat's actually moving still. By that time, you're in the groove, 3/4 of the mile, call the ball. And then you tell them how much fuel you got, what kind of airplane you are, and you land. hopefully you're on glide slope on center line. Everybody got that? No questions whatsoever?
I mean, I have a question on how you enter the stack. Make sure you're with the, in line with the other 3 people that may be in the same altitude as you.
Mm-hmm. So, when we're doing stuff, very rarely will we ever be at the same altitude. The only reason that they would do that is if they have a crap ton of people they're trying to get back to the boat. For our operations and even CSG3, the max that they would ever do would probably be two flights at the same altitude. And that basically what you do is you just time it with the other flight. Tell me when you're overhead the ship, and then you just kind of time it to get opposite of them. That's a good question, though.
Makes sense.
All right, so not every time are you going to hit a wire. So we need to know what to do if you do have a bolter, touch and go. So anybody know the difference between a touch and go or a bolter?
What are the hooks down or not?
Yep, absolutely. That's the only difference. A touch and go is I don't have the hook down, so I'm practicing just the pattern work. And then a bolter would be I had the hook down, I was trying to catch a wire, and I didn't catch a wire, whether I skipped over it or whatever it is. So the idea be there is that you suddenly got shot off the catapult, and you increase your altitude back up to 600 feet. You turn back to the BRC, and then when you have space and time, then you turn back downwind and resume as normal. So the big thing to, and there's no actual distance or anything like that, because you may have people coming in through the break while you're boltering, and that's the idea of them being at 800 feet and then coming over here and being at 600 feet. Is if you are climbing back up to 600 feet, they're at 800 feet, you can extend because they're braking. And then by the time that you see them brake, then you can then start turning. Cool.
Sweet.
Lurch, everybody's going to want to do this after this. All right, so spinning it is essentially kind of like going around. So if you're in the initial, so you're getting ready to go in the break, and someone boltered, and there's just a lot of people in the pattern at the same time, you may be told to spin it, or you just tell your flight, hey, we're going to spin it on the radio for the tower. And all that is you just go right back to your commence. You're already at 800 feet. You were already at 350 knots, so you just come right back around. Case 1 technique. So that's what you're supposed to do. How do you actually do it? So downwind and on speed. The biggest thing that I can tell everybody is zero math. You have to do zero math. Aircraft are smart nowadays. You have a ladder on both the T-45 and for the F-18, and that is giving you the bracket. Well, I'll go right here. You have a bracket, and that's the allowable opportune angle for your hook to grab. And this is giving you a visual indication of how the aircraft is currently sitting towards the boat, right? So if you can imagine, gonna have to go to the whiteboard now. Go over here. If you can imagine, here is the boat. This, we're just gonna say, is 9 degrees. And that's the perfect angle for the hook to come down and grab that wire. For your airplane to be at that 9 degrees. And it's going to grab it. If you come down on the glide slope that it tells it to. Sometimes you might be a little bit lower. and then sometimes you'll be a little bit higher. And it's going to give you the carrot in which you need to do. Does it make sense? So if you have a carrot going down, oops, crap, that means you need to go slower. Or if you are carrot up, that means you need to go faster. Or your nose needs to go up higher. The whole point of it is just keep it in the 0, because then there's 0 math. So on speed is referring to that AOA, that your aircraft is on speed for that perfect trap of the wire for the tail hook. Once you are on speed, at that point you're not pulling back, you're not trimming. All you're doing is using the throttles. So if you're perfectly lined up with that bracket, you calculate what you're actually going to be doing, and it's going to have to readjust. So what you want to do at that point is just throttle up for nose up, throttle back for nose down. And then all you're doing is just rolling the aircraft left and right. There are a ton of videos. Red Kite. There's a bunch of people that do it. Again, so the meatball right here, your flight indexer, that is, you're going to line that up with your bracket. That is, your landing gear bracket's only going to show when you got your gear down. It's going to change based on your flap position. So you should be full flaps, gear down. Well, full flaps based on wind, and gear down, obviously. Otherwise, if you don't have your hook down, this will blink. And what you want to do when you're first coming into the groove, you're going to have the meatball up here in the crook of the ship. And then as you get closer, you're going to bring it here. And the reason being is it's going this way. So you kind of want to lead your airplane a little bit. And when you get closer, the leading is not as relevant. Any questions on that?
Not yet.
So basically, the IFOLs is essentially the same thing as a PAPI and all that. It's based on your view that you're seeing is where that ball is moving. So if you get really high, that just means that the way that the lights are illuminated, that ball starts moving up. And the same thing if it goes lower. So what you want to do is you want to keep it with the green horizontal lights as much as possible. If we go back to here, you can see it's lined up. And you just that's all you want to do is you want to keep it. If it starts going up, that means you're floating up or you're not actually coming down. So you need to be pulling back the throttle just a little bit. If you make sudden moves, then all of a sudden your nose goes down and then you just go in the back of the airship. And then you get a call sign called thud. If the wave off lights come on, so with the supercarrier, for those who have the supercarrier, you'll get these all the time if you don't have the exact proper communication with a radio. If you're just practicing and you're not actually talking to the radio, you'll get these all the time. But in normal situations, if you are talking to the radio and you're actually doing the ball call and everything like that with the supercarrier, the only time you get that is if he indicates that you're below what is safe. So you're below this line right here, which would mean you would probably be below the deck, and you're in close enough that he says, you know what, you're not going to make it, or if you're too far right, too far left. Another thing, I don't think he has a picture of it. So there's another light that's right here on the back of the ship, and as you move further to the right, I believe it's green, and further to the left, it's more red. And so what you want is almost like an orange color or a very little bit green, because you're going to be on the right side trying to lead it a little bit. But yeah. Any questions here? pretty smart, pretty intuitive for the most part. Even though it would be impossibly stressful to do this in real life. Because if you miss, you're going in the water and you're not coming back out. So upon touching down on the flight deck, you're supposed to go to, if you're in the Tomcat, even though it's retired, you would go to full mill. In the F-18, you would go to max power for approximately 3 seconds, and that's the idea. Is just in case you bolter, you're not taking anything for granted, right? So, once you get caught on a wire, you just announce red deck on the radio, and then that basically tells everybody that you caught it and don't try to land right now. As soon as you're clear, just call green deck. Then you can worry about if your tail's folded and everything like that. Here's some ball calls and everything like that. There's a document. You guys have access to it. You can read it if you want to. The biggest thing is like here would be like 951 Hornet ball 4 point whatever, and 4 point whatever is your fuel state. Dealing with the carrier, they always want to know your fuel state. So anytime that you're saying something, you're going to say what your fuel state is. So that way, if they were to have to push off a tanker for emergency refuel, they would be able to do that. Sound good? There's really two configurations. One for your recovering. Now, where do you go? Right? So the idea is, unless you have people launching right here, the idea is just get over the red and white line, and then you can figure it out. The way that you would do parking typically would be you fill up the back rear or the aft starboard side. Then you move to the forget what it's called. Not the wreck. The yard, the junkyard, I think. And then in front of the island, and then over here, this is called the 6-pack. So you get over here immediately first, usually, and then push back to the aft of the boat. If you're not launching at the same time, you're not going to be going back out or anything like that. You have this entire huge area to use. So feel free. Totally opposite when you're launching, right? If you're doing both operations, you have a very small area to maneuver, and you need to make sure that nobody's in the groove when you're crossing over here to get into the launch area here on Cat 4. If you're recovering, you wouldn't be using Cat 3, but you may have to use Cat 4. It's a perfect one to have ready to go if you're doing like a ready 10 or ready 15. Cats 1, 2, 3, and 4 for those that did not know. Elevators 1, 2, 3, and 4. Any questions on configuration? All right. Text, calm down.
Okay.
So on most U.S. naval carriers, they already have pads written down on the ship. They're in upside down T's. The idea is that the tail of the helicopter is where the horizontal part of the T, and then the rest of the, so your horizontal stab on a Black Hawk would go on the horizontal part of the T, and then you're lined up with the vertical part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So typically speaking, for the most part, carriers use 3, 4, 5, and 6 for the most part. Typically, you won't see them use pads 1 and 2 unless maybe they have a lot of traffic going on. And then 7, you probably don't want to use because you got an elevator right there unless you're going to recover. They'll use it for when they use the guard helicopter to come back, and he's going to go into the elevator right afterwards. Questions there? Cool. So there's another view of it. Again, forward to aft.
How do helicopters enter the pattern for the aircraft carrier?
I will talk about that in 1 second. And then on the other naval ships, there's just one pad, so you don't have to worry about that. I'm glad that you said something about that, because just like it was mentioned earlier on an airfield, if you have everything's going on over here with the fixed wingers, rotor winger guys are going to be over here. And they don't have to do like this complex pattern, because they can just hover. They can just, if they do orbit, it would just be
They would just stay in formation with the aircraft carrier.
essentially go to guard. So the guard helicopter is usually about right there, and anywhere from 200 to 400 feet. You got to give a little bit of separation from those guys coming in the break. So when you do get pulled in, or you're going to be coming in, you want to go after the boat, crossing as fast and as on purpose. I'm trying to think of a better word for that, to get through the groove, and then you're going to come up alongside the carrier, and then you're going to be sliding over to the position in which you're going to be landing, and then you set down. And then when you are going to leave, you come up on power, go into a hover, slide to the left. It's almost like we're doing like a Tootsie Roll or whatever. We're going to slide to the left, and then we're going to go BRC until we are clear of the area, and then we'll go on to whatever heading we need to go on. Sound good?
Sweet.
When it comes to, that's all I have for this stuff. When it comes back to fixed airfield, whoa, I moved it. I didn't know I could move it. Shit, I would have done that a long time ago. When it comes to fixed airfield, if you're taking off from a taxiway here as a helicopter, you can pretty much go wherever the fuck you want to go. Just make sure you're doing it in a safe and direct way, concise and correct. So the idea is, if you're going over here for something, then you want to go as perpendicular and as expedient as possible. That's the word I was looking for. And then you can go off to whatever you're going to go do. Does that make sense? What we're not going to do is we're not going to make you go hover, wait, okay, now, wait, what the fuck is going on here? Hover, wait, and then, okay, now we need to go this way. We clear the pattern. Okay, now we can go this way. Like, there's no point in doing that, especially for what we're doing. The idea behind all this teaching and everything like that is just to make everybody safer and aware and doing the same thing. So I honestly have no idea what the A10 standard is for the altitudes. F-16s, apparently it's 1,500 feet. F-15s might be something completely different. F-22s probably don't give a shit. They'll do whatever the fuck they want. For us, for what we're doing, it's the best thing for us to do the exact same thing. That way we can then deconflict when we need to. We can adjust because we know what's expected from everybody. Except for helicopter guys. Because they're crazy. Any questions? That's all I got. You guys are really quiet.
All right, I'm back. What were we doing?
Fuck you. What a dick. So you guys are free to go about the country. Ideally, especially 93 guys, if you have time, be great for you to go jump in and try to do some of that stuff. Speaking of which, I don't think I've reset the server in about 2 weeks, which is probably one of the reasons why we had issues on Tuesday.
Are we stand by?
Okay.
You want to go over the attendance policy changes?
Sure. I can definitely do that. So the next time you guys fucking miss something, you're fired. How's that? No,
Fired.
that's not what we're saying. So the idea behind the change, I'm sure some of you read it. Hopefully all of you read it. Is that we're only going to be having from here henceforth out official nights for the entire JTF on Tuesdays, 8:30 to conclusion. And then the individual squadron will still have a second night, but that will be up to the squadron to figure out when that's going to be. The idea behind that is that we have, obviously, you can see there's not that many people here compared to there was on Tuesday. We're having a problem with Thursdays. We're having a problem with getting people here. I even have trouble sometimes on Thursdays getting here. And what we want to do is we don't want to keep on punishing people for having lives. Even though we want you in DCS all the time. God, I wish I was too. But there's other shit in our lives that are priorities. But we want to be able to have some flex. So whether you get put on a shitty shift, and I always use emo and vapor, but that's because they're in the Air Force, and they have high standards in the Air Force, and sometimes they have to work past 5 o'clock. We don't want penalized or people missing out, and then it discourages the entire group because nobody's on here, right? So if everybody came in here on a Thursday and there's 3 people in here, some people would look at it and be like, fuck it, I ain't getting on. Obviously nothing's going on. And here we're bitching because nobody's in here. So that's the idea behind it. It provides a little bit of flexibility. I think it'll help. Especially if we see on Mondays, I know that 181st, I believe they're going to be doing Sundays, right, Lurch?
That's correct.
So Sunday, so if people are online and they're like, no, what do I do on Sunday? And they see there's a bunch of guys on, then they're probably going to jump on, right? And then it may be, hey, they're doing case 1 recoveries, and I just learned about that. I would like to try that. I'm going to get in a T45, and I'm going to go try to do that shit. And I'm going to fuck it up, but that's okay. Or maybe they're doing JDAM tax and stuff like that, and you finally got it in the F-16, and you want to go try it out. Who knows? So that's the idea. God, what the fuck are you doing?
My fault. And it's loud.
So that's the idea behind it. So we will be definitely checking attendance still, but the difference is when it's going to happen. So definitely Tuesdays, and then talk to your squadron mates. The staff guys should come up with a plan unless they want you to come up with a plan with them. We'll go from there. How's that? Did I explain it?
Cool.
Hoorah.
Is that a pretty good explanation, or
Fantastic.
does everybody have any questions? If anybody thinks that we don't want to do Thursdays, that is not it. We're just trying to make sure that we're accommodating for people that can't make it on Thursdays. If that makes any sense.
Cool.
I don't have anything else. You guys can.
All right, cool. Hey, Hogs, let's go down to a hotel.
93. Let's go to Alpha. All right, now we're in a slightly more consolidated private chat. Well, hello. Emo, what you got?
Nothing.
Oh, now he's gonna pull that shit.
Pull what shit?
Yeah, you know what? What are you guys doing?
I'll talk to you later.
So what are you guys doing?
No idea. I thought we were going to practice this shit.
We definitely can. Does anybody have thoughts, concerns about like what day of the week would be good?
I just can't do Wednesdays.
Are they still doing on Mondays? Are they? Everyone's still doing the Warbirds or whatever?
I haven't seen it in the last couple weeks, but I mean, if Mondays works for people, then that's great. Personally, most nights usually work for me, except for Wednesdays, just because I got my kids, and then Fridays and probably Saturdays and Sundays because I got shit going on because I have kids, and they dominate my non-working nights. So I don't know. I mean, the biggest thing is we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys here on a squadron that we at one time expanded to have additional slots. We just need to keep on working on getting people here and finding out when those times are. That are like the money spot, so to speak. And getting those people engaged on doing fun stuff that is actually worth doing. I think we've got a lot of things cooking in the fires here to make things work. But a great example, in hand, they both have excuses. We've got No Scope, Archer, Doc, and Urzu not here, so.
Yeah, that's a bummer. No shows, man. No LOA. They usually don't do that.
Yeah, there's usually no way for at least Doc and Nerzu. I've seen a lot.
Yeah. So part of it is, you know, if the guys aren't going to be here and it just doesn't work out or whatever the reason is, then it doesn't work out. And that just, it happens. So then we need to get more people to fill those spots.
I see Monday or Sunday being a good day for a flight.
And on top of it, if we have a plan in place as far as like what we're going to be working on, it doesn't have to be everybody. We don't all have to be on the same time at the same place to do whatever it is. So if Sorcerer, you know, he's working through his level 1 and 2 again, and he's getting stuff checked off, and he says, "Hey, Snow, I'd like to work on XYZ. Can we get together on Monday?" And so then Snow says, "Hey guys, Monday, we're going to be working on XYZ. Whoever wants to come out and work with us, we're going to do that. And 4 or 5 people show up. Now all of a sudden you have kind of like almost like a mini event going on. So it can be very fluid. If we want to say, you know, if you don't hear anything else, do Thursdays. Otherwise, be flexible. You know what I mean? And so what we're going to do is essentially say, okay, if Snow and Sorcerer are working on Monday, that stuff works out for them. And then they don't necessarily have to be here on Thursday because they already worked on stuff. So
Roger that.
does that make sense?
It does indeed.
Yep. Which, kind of one thing I wanted to ask, I guess more so Divot and Iron Hand as well, but you probably are aware of it at least, Stud. Is the spirit of this so that, like, we still have a group night for the 93rd, one night a week, plus our mission night on Tuesday night, and then as far as, like, training goes for level 1, 2, 3, should that be more of an individual?
Ideally, yeah. Ideally, not to cut you off, ideally, if you're working on stuff that, I don't want to say behind the curve, but everybody else has proceeded past, yes, absolutely, that should be, hey, Snow, I need 10 minutes of your time. I just want to get freshened up on, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I only asked just because I was talking with Sarge this last weekend when I was out there with him, and the way that they were kind of been dealing it with Eagle. I'm just kind of want to make sure because I've only seen in my time here, at least for the Makos, most of the guys that come in for training, they're only doing it on Tuesday and Thursday nights, which I think is the purpose of it. So I just want to make sure that's not the expectation.
Yeah, my expectation is not that you Fumble are going to be on for 3 or 4 nights a week. If that's what you want to do, then absolutely, by all means. But required would only be 2 nights a week. One being we're on together. Like I said, if we want to set Thursday night is the thing, but then Monday night ends up being that everybody's pretty much on, maybe we just count that as that week required. You know, especially if maybe you couldn't make it on that Thursday, kind of thing. So
Gotcha.
we're gonna be fluid. The idea is we don't want to penalize as many people for not being here for having lives, but we want to make sure the people are on here. There's a lot of money that gets put up on the backside of things, and time that gets put up on the backside of things. I spent way more time than I'll ever admit to my employer how much time I spend on all this stuff as far as time goes. Not to mention I'm paying for the server for the most part, and the website and the Google Drive that we use everything on, and all that stuff. So, and I'm not saying well that holds something, but we want to make sure there's people here using it rather than it just going to waste.
Yeah, I've been there before. Which I have this one idea that I got introduced with my current helicopter school. Go ahead and share it here. So they run this little system, which they pay for, obviously, on this website. But you can make this pretty easily on Google Sheets. But all it is, like, they even have it to where you rent out the aircraft and you just go in here, you click. So this Beta 2 is available all day. I want it from 11 to 1. I just go in here, make a schedule, and then I pick which instructor and where at, and if it's ground school, whatever. Just kind of having a system.
Uh-oh, lost you. Fumble. We lost you, buddy.
Nope. Hello?
Yep. Okay, you're back.
So they can come in here and be like, oh, hey, my instructor's free from 8 to 10 a.m. I can go ahead and schedule a flight for that, or just get training on it. Just one thing I wanted to.
pretty awesome.
I saw. Yeah.
We had Gilded. And a lot of people didn't like it because it's different. But it has a lot more functions and features, and I've got Jixer looking into possible functions and features that we could possibly implement into Discord. But the cool thing about Gilded is it had this interactive calendar. And you kind of could do that, where I could say, hey, I'm available from this time to this time. And I'm trying to see if I can pull it up.
I think I remember seeing something like that. It was only limited in the sense of like you could schedule, hey, the instructor could say, hey, I'm free at this time, but the students couldn't be like, oh yeah, I'd like to schedule that time.
You could say, let me go in the event calendar here. I could say I'm available from this time to this time, but then if someone, like anybody could go in and say, I want to fly at this time, and then create an event, and then invite that person, and then they would be able to say yes or no. So you can do all that in Gilded. Again, it does change some things. So, but we're trying to find a way, if we can possibly push that into Discord in some way, fashion, or form. That'd be great. But until then, yeah, having a Google spreadsheet, possibly. So, yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, we didn't have, when I was flying with OSU, they had their own system, but it wasn't like drag and drop. They had like super cumbersome, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of shit out there that you could find that was way better.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like the best way I could think of doing it for free would just be try to make a Google form for it, which I was trying to kind of get that online really quickly, but that was kind of being more of a headache than it was worth.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, is that how we want to figure out like dates and times for everything? Just put a form up in the 93rd.
Potentially. I'll get with the staff guys and see what they want to do, what their availability is, and then go from there. If we want to put up a form for like availability or training or something like that. I know we used to have. Let me see. Training requests. We have a room for training requests. So if someone says, hey, I'm going to be on tomorrow night and I need to get XYZ checked off, they can put it in there. It pings all the IPs and stuff like that. So that definitely helps when you're trying to get something done. But as far as if we're going to stay on Thursdays or we're going to move to another night, as of right now, there's no change. I think we just got to get everybody's consensus together. I can create a form poll, whatever you want to call it, to figure out who wants what days and times. We can do that. Do you guys have any suggestions? If it wasn't Thursday at 8:30, what times would you guys like look at?
Monday or Sunday?
Monday or Sunday?
Yeah, I'd go with either of those, and Fridays.
And then we have Fridays. What's that?
I said Fridays are kind of hard for people, you know, family stuff, date night.
Typically
for those with
speaking,
families.
Yeah, for those with families. Typically speaking, that's usually more like a in past groups that I've been participant of. Friday nights would be usually kind of like a go raid a server kind of night. kind of get, I don't want to say fuck off, but kind of a fuck off night where you kind of go mess around. So Mondays, Sundays, possibly Fridays. Obviously we have Thursdays. I think honestly, I think a lot of it is just cyclical, where it's becoming nicer outside, so we're going to see attendance drop off. And then eventually the stuff will come back up. So, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that.
Sorcerer, you got anything? Other than being quiet?
He's napping.
He's sleeping. Fall asleep, Sorcerer? Maybe you did. Crazy. All right, guys. Well, I don't have anything else. If you guys want to fly, the server is up. So you're more than welcome to fly. I think it's in Syria, but I think the other server's in Persian Gulf. So whichever.
Oh yeah, we're still doing those log sheets.
No. It's not tracking the whatchamacallit is not tracking yes, no, but remind me later. It's not tracking the landings, but essentially the software eventually will, but it's not quite there yet. So if you go to our website, JTF 501. Here, I'll share my screen.
Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty fancy, man, on the website.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. So, if you go over here, the last thing on the side, go to stats. It'll actually bring this up. If you don't see your name there, you can always just type in your call sign, whatever it is. It'll pull it up. But if we go to fumble, it'll actually tell you what airplanes have you flown on the, or over here. Where is it?
It's gonna say the top right, but I don't know when I flew a Tupolev 22.
And I'm not sure how that works out. You fly anything else other than that? F-16, A-10, and UH-1?
Altitude.
Not that I can think of.
Altitude.
Interesting. Well, you're logging some time, brother. I have no idea how. But it gives you everything. It gives you how many times you've killed things. Gives you flight logs. Gives you weapon shots. Shots, hits, kills. Ship, helicopter, buildings, airplane kills, all that kind of stuff. So the only thing it doesn't do, if you notice, you get your air kills, ground losses, crashes, deaths. Now it will count a death every time you exit without landing. So it just abruptly, it almost logs it as a crash.
Gotcha.
So if you're gonna rage quit, that's gonna cost you a death. And then I believe you just hit that to go back. Or you just hit back. Look at snow. Got 24 hours total time. Of that 24 hours, you were in the air 14 hours and 30 minutes. It's doing a lot of sitting on the ground time. So it gives you all that kind of stuff, and you just get back. And the only thing is, I have to manually run it. So I try to do it like once or twice a week.
Altitude. Altitude.
So, yep. Yeah, I fly a lot of different crap.
QH1 Daka.
What is that?
Is that
Oh,
like
probably the
the
different positions.
Altitude.
yeah?
Altitude.
30 seconds, less than 1 second. No, that's a minute. 32 minutes, 50 seconds, 15 minutes. Typically not that. Then 4 hours, 40 minutes. It's interesting.
Pull up.
So I don't sit on the ground that long. Cool. So that is that.
Altitude. Altitude.
Sorcerer, did you wake up yet? All right, guys. I am going to excuse myself. I'm going to probably pull Emo up in another room. We're going to chit-chat for a bit.
Wow.
Oh, how about O's?
Have fun.
Yeah, we'll be fine. If Sorcerer does come back on, I know there's stuff that he needs to get checked off. So if you guys want to fly with him and just see, hey, is he ready to get that stuff checked off? He may just need some confidence to reassure himself. He's been through this stuff, but it has been probably like 6 months. So we're just checking over, making sure that he hasn't forgot it all.
Just like riding a bike.
Yeah. I mean, he did really good Tuesday night, so I didn't see any major issues or anything like that. So we shall see. As far as the IP stuff, I know Emo, Jixer, myself, we're all kind of working on standards right now, trying to come up with those standards. So yes, but we haven't formally put it together yet.
Altitude.
Right now, we've gone off of, if you've gone through level 3 and you could instruct it and someone evaluates somebody instructing it, then they get signed off to be an IP, basically. Like if you were able to teach me, walk me through how to refuel, and while I'm doing it, you can help me correct things so that I can actually do the task. That's what we would watch and observe, and then that's what you would be striving for.
Roger that. I do that too, you know.
Yeah.
I can't. I was doing with Eagle with the A10s.
Yeah. It is an art and a skill that you have to acquire. Some people are natural teachers, but taking that information and conveying it while someone's trying to do it, and then they're not doing it the way that you would do it, so then you have to convey it differently. It takes a little bit of work.
Those that can't do
Altitude.
things, brother.
Altitude.
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually true though, because you have to know what you're doing in order to teach it. You may not be able to do it, but you have to know it and know it really well. You're
It really
probably gonna
on
fucking touch.
It completely depends on the subject matter, in my experience. There's some people who can really just fake it till they make it.
Yeah, there probably is some of that. I would say like on a more skilled profession, it's gonna be harder to do, but I don't know. If you're just passing along information, I guess you could probably, like you said, fake it till you make it. But you can tell though. I mean, we've all had those teachers that and Fumble, if you're in helicopter flight school, then you definitely know if this person is just faking it. You could tell right away. because when you start asking questions because you don't understand it, and they're like, I'll get back to
Be
you.
the man.
I'll get back to you. Yeah, you just pull real hard on the collective and you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Pull up. Pull up. Pull up.
Yep.
Altitude. Altitude.
So
Well, I'm going to jump in and do some of that pattern work, some of the things we discussed tonight.
yeah, man. I mean, if you've been through any flight school training, you'll know that. I mean, that's where even airline pilots, you know, when they're out of the seat for a while,
Altitude.
that's what they go do when they're going to the sim pattern work, even with an airliner. That's the first thing that they do, because it's something that you build in that's always there.
Pull up.
It's a
Altitude.
common skill that you will always use. It's like Fummel said, riding a bike. So first thing you do is you get back and do that, because if you can do that, then everything else starts coming back. Oh, Sorcerer woke up. No, never mind. He went back to sleep.
Altitude. Altitude.
That's one thing Sims are good at, is it allows you to really kind of drill your
Pull up.
procedures without necessarily having to use your book.
Yeah,
Pull up.
absolutely. Like if you're hitting your speed, your times, your turns exactly when you need to hit them. You're hitting your altitudes, you're hitting your marks. It just kind of syncs with everything, and then you can just, if you're having a bad day, you go and do that, and then you just feel synced, and you can just go and do, you know, if you were working on refueling and you were struggling with it or something like that, go do some pattern work. It sounds silly, but then you kind of calm down and you get back into the groove of things, and you're like, all right, let's go and do this.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious, and maybe one day I'll be lucky enough to figure this out, but I feel like doing DCS air-to-air refuel in various aircraft has really helped me with like my stick control, because I was able to hover at less than 3 hours, and then I was told right after my last one, which was about 8.4 hours, I think it was 8.4, 8.6, that like most people don't even do it till 10 hours. I was like, oh shit. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was surprised by that, because I'm like, well, yeah, I've been hovering by myself for 5 hours now.
Altitude.
I know in the Army they don't even teach hovering until I think it's after auto rotations. Because the idea behind that is that they want you to feel like you actually are controlling the helicopter, and then you come back and all right, now we're gonna slow things down.
Altitude. Altitude.
I think how he did it was first flight, he didn't pick up, got us to safe altitude, kind of showing how you'll do stuff day to day, and then once you're there, get experience with the controls, climbs, descends, lefts, rights, and then I want to say he actually had me shoot 2 approaches and then do a set down on that first one. I think that's what made him comfortable enough to have me do the pickup on the second flight.
There you go.
That's
good stuff, man.
Got good skills from it, and I don't really, other than I think 20 hours or so in fixed wings when I was out in Tucson, like I don't have any actual flight time, so all of it's just based off sims for the last 12 years.
Wow. Oh, go you, man.
So great stuff, especially with, I mean, flight models are still, like you can tell what's wrong with the Huey when you fly it, but it's still like one of the best ones out there. I never tried to explain paid stuff, but even doing like your IFR stuff, you could probably learn your entire IFR check ride just off of a simulator.
Yeah, and nowadays, especially with the level D simulators that we use, like at NetJets, and flight safety, I mean, they're all FAA certified and everything like that. They're logging time, they're logging all their landings and everything like that in the simulator. So it's pretty cool stuff. Cool. All right, guys. We'll talk to you later if Sorcerer does come back. Tell him he missed stuff.
Altitude. Altitude.
All right, take care, man.
See you.
Pull up.
See you.
Pull up. Pull up. Altitude. Altitude.
Yo.
Go.
I'm sorry for snapping at you. It wasn't the place or time to talk about the specifics, and I didn't want to talk about it at the point. So I'm sorry for snapping at you.
Oh, it's all good.
Bullshit, dude. That's
It's all
why you
good.
went. That's why you went cold.
Altitude.
Me go cold? Nah, never.
Pull
Hey, do you
up.
want me to stop the stream?
Pull up.
Dick.
Pull up.
It's okay. My mic wasn't even apparently recording for that portion. So it's only you talking.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah.
And you know, if it is 1500, I couldn't find it anywhere.